Today's video is going to be centered around the Leningrad scene. There are a lot of bands from Leningrad and modern-day St. Petersburg. A lot of them are extremely popular and respected. Names such as Auktion, Aquarium, and Pop Mechanika are so big and culturally important that not making entire videos dedicated to their discography would be a big disservice. There were, however, other bands that did not leave a big mark on Leningrad's cultural history, but were just as good, if not sometimes better. This video will involve me briefly introducing 4 bands from the Leningrad scene which I happen to like. I'll go over the band's history, describe a little bit about what kind of music they were making, pick out a few albums and pieces for you to possibly check out. The music in this video will mostly fall under the category of progressive rock and experimental rock. However, I am planning to do this kind of video with other genres, scenes, and eras. This is a new video concept I decided to create whilst working on bigger projects similar to the brief history of Soviet post-punk video. So don't worry, those types of videos will continue coming, they just take more time to make. Anyway, shall we begin? The first band I would like to mention is Jungli. Jungli was formed back in the early 80s. The band was never extremely popular, however the band's lineup had some really big names. Jungli's percussionist at one point was none other than Pavel Litvinov of Auktion fame. During the mid-80s, the band worked with Moscow artist Yuri Orlov of Nikolai Kopernik fame, and the band's bassist was none other than Igor Tikhomirov, the same Tikhomirov who played in the ultra-popular post-punk band Kino. Despite these big names, Jungli was usually associated with the band's guitarist Andrei Atraskin. Atraskin was an amazing guitar player, usually considered to be one of the best in Leningrad. What separated Atraskin from a lot of his peers was the ability to balance between technique and amazing soulful compositions. Some early Jungli tracks can be found online. The band's music was chaotic and weird. Some people attributed the popular terms such as no wave and rock in opposition to the band. However, I think Jungli was still mainly a normal traditional progressive rock band, even at that time. Sadly, most of the old recordings are of extremely poor quality, but if you're an experienced Soviet music listener, it will be okay. Now let's talk about Jungli's late 80s transformation. This time period was when Jungli would form their iconic sound, a mix of soft, dreamy progressive music electronic experimentations, some jazz fusion catchiness, and just a little bit of post-rock. These recordings would be later compiled into a 2-CD set under the name Шесть Marokkanskих Ящиков. This CD set also includes the band's first and only official studio album, Весна в Шанхае. The music was cleaned up a bit, but the creative experimental touches were still left intact. Some elements might have not aged super well as the others, but the compositions themselves and the atmosphere that Atraskin creates overall was extremely unique for Soviet music. Hell, it was pretty impressive for 80s prog rock overall, not just Soviet. Jungli wouldn't release any other albums, but that doesn't mean they stopped making music. One of the last recorded Jungli pieces was the absolutely fantastic Epitaph, the logical conclusion to years of Atryaskhin's work and an amazing goodbye piece from the band. The jazz and post-rock elements were fully developed now. And the previous prog sound was made darker. Now here's a name most people won't recognize. Sepsis played mind-melting Soviet krautrock, or in this case maybe it should be called Sovrock then, not sure. Interestingly enough, the band's drummer Ivan Fedenko also played in Jungli at the time. Not much is known about Sepsis' backstory. The band was formed in the city of Pushkin, which is in the St. Petersburg district. Apparently Sepsis considered themselves to be a progressive metal band, but this definitely wasn't some Soviet Fate Swarming clone. Sepsis would only release one album and the exact circumstances are not really known, but the approximate date of recording is estimated to be 1990. I've seen online users compare Sepsis to all sorts of bands, from Rush to King Crimson and Mike Oldfield. However, I don't think any of these comparisons are really that close. The band's only known album, Liturgy of Madness, is an extremely fun and adventurous piece of Soviet underground music that mixes elements of acid rock, krautrock, hard rock, and traditional art rock. Сезон Дождей, along with Jungli, was one of the leaders of the underground Leningrad prog movement. The band's roots go all the way back to the mid-1970s, when members of Сезон Дождей played under different band names such as Aliens, for example. Сезон Дождей as we know it, however, was formed in the heart of a Soviet band's year of 1984. The band quickly garnered a lot of traction for their masterful instrumental performances. In only 3 years, Сезон Дождей went from an up-and-coming prog band to opening the Leningrad Rock Festival and sharing the stage with the likes of Kino. The entire band was amazing, however the band's guitarist, Maxim Pshenichny, received the most praise. His spacey guitar playing technique, which at times reminds me a little bit of David Gilmour, caught the attention of people such as Sergei Kuryakhin and Boris Grebenshikov of Aquarium fame. Soon, two band members of Сезон Дождей, Bardash and Lavrienko, left the band to form their own project called Olelukoye. At the same time as Olelukoye was forming, Maxim Pshenichny would travel to Germany and buy brand new high-quality synthesizers for the band. After stacking up on new music gear, Pshenichny and the remaining members of the band, one of whom was Alexei Zubarev, the same Zubarev who plays in Aquarium, would travel to Lithuania, where they would record their first official album, Возвращение. The album was recorded on the Litanus studio, and the album was produced by Giedrius Kuprevičius of Argo fame. The album is one of the best Soviet prog releases I have heard. Imagine Eduard Artemyev's film scores for Tarkovsky's Solaris and Stalker, but mixed with early King Crimson, Vangelis, La Dusseldorf and Secret Oyster. The band's follow-up record, Album Traf, was recorded back in St. Petersburg at the Fontanka studio. The band got the chance to record there thanks to Boris Grebenshikov, who recommended the band to ex-Aquarium member Sasha Titov, who worked at the studio at the time. Although the album is really good, I recommend starting with the band's debut Возвращение, as I think it gives a better representation of the band. It is also much more atmospheric and has aged better, in my personal opinion. But after listening to the debut, definitely give the follow-up album a try also. Tambourine is one of those bands that used to have a lot of buzz around them, but something didn't work out and soon fell into semi-obscurity. The band belonged to Vladimir Levy, who previously worked with Aquarium on their classic avant folk masterpiece Triangle. After feeling inspired by his time in Aquarium, Levy decided to form his own band called Tambourine. If Boris Grebenshikov was more inspired by the rougher American side of folk rock and then mixed with Russian bard music, Levy gravitated towards a gentler British progressive folk sound that was prominent in the late 60s and early 70s. Together with ex-members of Aquarium and a flute player from Picnic, Tambourine started their musical career. Levy and his band shared the stage with huge Leningrad names like Aquarium and Zoopark immediately. Let's just say the friendship with Boris helped a little. The band recorded their first album at Andrei Tropilo's place, but Levy was unhappy with the result and seems to do his best to try and erase this album from people's memory. However, if I heard the right issue, I think the album was actually done quite well, especially if taking into account the limited equipment available in Leningrad at the time.
Струны послушны, и много ли нужно, их звук прежде слух мой ласкал. Бегали пальцы и в стремительном вальсе я раньше неплохо играл.
Tambourine managed to record a full-length album at the Melodia studio in 1988. The album had a really nice polished pop sound without the typical 80s reverb, synths and drum machines that were prominent everywhere.
Я уже в пути, забудь меня или прости. Я уже в пути, забудь меня или прости. Я уже в пути. Здравствуй и прощай, прощай. Найдет тепло.
To me, it personally feels more like a 70s Fleetwood Mac type of release than something from the 80s. The album was a minor hit in their hometown of Leningrad, but some of the members weren't really feeling the new pop rock sound and soon left the band. As a result, the band's second official album was recorded with a bunch of jazz session musicians and Levy on the vocals. Tambourine seems to have fallen into the trap that many creative bands did in Perestroika. People wanted politics and extreme forms of self-expression, not light-hearted tunes for a late-night walk in Leningrad. Even though Levy's creativity only seemed to have poured more with every new release and song, maintaining a band without members that shared the same vision as he was hard. News from Tambourine got quieter and quieter with every new year. If you know any interesting facts about the bands mentioned in today's video, or simply want to recommend another interesting artist or album, leave a comment below. Feel free to write down corrections for possible errors I have made during the video, and don't forget to leave suggestions for possible future video ideas pertaining to the topic of Eastern European music. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on the video if you want to see more content. Also, one more thing I would want to ask some of you guys. Would you be interested more in videos about one specific artist, or where it's like a compilation of a few? I am asking this because there are some artists I would like to make more thorough videos about. For example, videos about Sergei Kuryohin, Megapolis, Vopli Vidoplasova, Aquarium, and Alfred Schnittke. Okay, that's all for today. Bye bye.